In 1903, Mary Gibbs became not only the first female park superintendent in Minnesota, but a pivotal figure in the development of the park. Thanks to Mary's bravery, we're able to enjoy the beautiful pine forest of Itasca State Park that were on the brink of destruction.
When we were developing the new center at the headwaters, there was no question who we were going to name it after. We were going to name it after Mary Gibbs because of the role that she had played. Even though it was a short moment, only 3 months in history, it was one that drew attention to the park. When the park was established in 1891, we just say it was a park on paper. We did not own any of the land. We had to acquire it. And some of that land was already in private ownership, different timber investors in the area. The park being a new park, being that our state was just getting into the business of operating a state park, that they wanted to negotiate and work with the lumber companies. They were given permission to load logs on Lake Itasca in the winter, and the first log drive went down the Mississippi River out of Lake Itasca in 1901. Our fourth commissioner was Jonathan Gibbs, and Jonathan Gibbs came to this area. He brought his wife, his youngest daughter, Mary Gibbs. His job was to continue to acquire land that was in private land holdings, but also to start managing what land we had. Little did he know he was going to pass away in February of 1903, and his daughter, Mary, was appointed as acting park commissioner. She had done a lot of secretarial work for her father, so she was familiar with the operations of the park. And when Mary Gibbs was taking her office, she took her responsibilities and her roles seriously. She strongly believed in the development of this park. She was 24 at the time when she got the appointment. You have to think of the era. In the country at that time, women didn't really have the right to vote. So for her to act in a role appointed by a governor was very unusual. And with that came some challenges. She was having to work with the lumber companies as they were getting ready to float their logs down. As she was trying to enforce the policy of not letting the water rise too high behind the dam, that they were building this head of water up to float logs, every time she went to the site to ask them to open the dam, they would say, yep, sure, and they'd open up the dam, let some water out. By the time she'd get to her office, they'd close it and it would keep building up. And she kept writing the Attorney General saying, do I have authority to do this? And she was getting very frustrated. It blew up at the dam, so to speak. The waterhead was getting too high. It was 3 feet above flood stage. It was flooding the forest land behind, and Mary Gibbs was told that she had authority to go up there. The state had condemned that land back in December, that we owned the site where the dam was. She could go forward and tell them they needed to let the water out to lower that water level. She walked up to that site with Martin Heinzelman, who was a constable in the area. They're going to tell him, open these gates, you're breaking the contract. And the foreman, Wolf, he looks at them, points his gun at them and says, if anybody puts their hand on that lever, I'm going to shoot it off. Martin Heinzelman, fearing for his life and Mary's life, returns the papers to Mary and said, I can't serve these. Well, Mary Gibbs walked up to that lever holding those papers. She put her hand on the lever and she said, I will too put my hand on this lever and you'll not shoot it off either. But Mary Gibbs was interviewed in the 1950s. She said, now in hindsight, I realize that was rather foolish. I could have been shot. The very next day, Mary Gibbs was served with papers. She was forbidden to be in the area because in those court documents it was said that she and Martin Heinzelman were the ones who were shooting off their guns and threatening the lives of the men at the site. She wrote a letter to the Attorney General and said no such thing happened. Heinzelman attested to it. Other homesteaders in the area who were nearby attested that she didn't have a gun, that she did not do this. But by the time the St. Paul and the Attorney General could send any help her way, by the time they arrived at Itasca, all the logs were gone. The water had gone down and there wasn't an issue. So poor Mary, in her frustration because she felt she wasn't getting support, she turned down the appointment. Her family didn't know that part of her history. She was a woman who believed the past is the past and you just move on. And when our building, the Mary Gibbs Center, was dedicated, it's the first time any of the Gibbs family came back to Itasca. And so they were very honored when they came and saw their grandmother's name on that building, and for them to actually walk up and see the Mississippi River and see the vast pine forest that she had helped to protect and set aside, that they were very touched to know that their grandmother in 1903 helped play a part in establishing and helping to preserve the pine forests of Itasca.
Prairie Mosaic is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4, 2008, the North Dakota Council on the Arts, and by the members of Prairie Public.